Hi, everyone. This is Susie Brown, parent and wellness coach. Welcome to our morning show. I am here with Sharoya, and we are going to be talking about a book that we've both read, and I think a lot of parents out there have read. It's called How to Raise an Adult, Break Free of the Parenting Trap, and Prepare Your Kids for Success by Julia Lythcott-Haims. Sharoya, before we get started, Sharoya, how are you? How are things?
It's been a whirlwind for me this month. I had a friend going through a very deep crisis, and so was there by her side for a while. And then I had guests come in, and so I had to switch my mood from just sadness to hey, here, so glad you're here. Let's go to Cape Town. And so, but thankfully I was able to do it, and we had a good time, and it was a refreshing time because, sometimes, Susie, having guests is just like, oh, I want guests, but then I just dread being the one they have to depend on, or some tend to depend on you more than others. But I have to say, I was really proud of myself. I took a lot of the advice we give here on the Big Purple Blog. Take care of yourself first. And really, just set up some gentle, but yes, firm boundaries of what I can provide and what I will not be able to. And it really did go well. How about you? What you been up to?
We should do a podcast on being a good host and also being a good guest. I think that would be, because we tend to go and we stay for long periods of time, right? So it's not like a weekend stop by. But so we are, Sri Lanka right now is going through a very, very, very challenging time. And they are economically in a situation that is quite dire. And it is protest after protest after protest. It's not a good situation. I doubt very much that we'll go to authorized or ordered departure for sure, not ordered, but it's very, very hard on this country right now. And it to me just emphasizes how fortunate we are to be overseas under the umbrella of the embassy, because the unbelievable care that they give to families and to make sure that we stay safe, and we have, for example, fuel in our generator, have a generator, have a home that doesn't leak, and then we have the good fortune of being among a community that is supportive, and there people share WhatsApp. Oh, I found milk at this place. Oh, I found rice at this place, because literally there's no fuel in the country, so imports have been made illegal. It's really hard for local Sri Lankans to get food and milk and anything that's not grown within the vicinity of their home, because there is no deliveries, because none of the trucks have diesel. I queued up last week to get some fuel, shockingly. So I wisely maybe picked the gas station that has the most expensive fuel. So I only had to queue up for just under an hour. But other people I know have been hours and hours. And the lorries and the buses and the trucks are basically just abandoned on the road because there's no diesel. So they queued up, ran out of their fuel while they were waiting, and then now they're just sitting there. And I don't know how long it'll be before they finally get some fuel. It's a really shocking situation. And you know what? I'm sorry, this isn't what our topic was about, but what's so interesting? We have lived most of our foreign service life in what most people would call a hardship post. A lot of them were in Africa. And it kind of feels like all of the countries, at least that we lived in Africa, if this economic situation would have hit, it would have been like, "Ay, that's kind of hard. No problem. We'll just figure it out." It just felt like, it feels like, I don't know, maybe because they haven't been able to rise very high anyway. I don't know. But here it is just taken everyone's feet out from under them and knock them down, and just people are scrambling and they just have really no idea how to help themselves and help the families. It's really been an interesting experience.
Wow, Susie. Thank you for sharing. I think because we live in these bubbles, right? I don't know what's happening in your world. And so I appreciate that. And I can relate in terms of, when I had to evacuate, my family and I evacuated from Abidjan during the war. It was like our kids we definitely all had that moment, like we're leaving friends behind who do not have these privileges that we have. And so it's striking to look at. And also, I think it's worth conversations with our kids to see what they're thinking, how they're processing it, and what can we actually do with all of this that we've been given.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
And I think Julie would say, the author of this book we're going to talk about, is certainly to bring our kids in and help have them talk about it and problem solve. Because raising an adult, as she says in the book, is that a firm commitment to take an adult role in our society. And that's where it begins, as she mentions in the book, is just in those early years when we're having those conversations of like, how can you step up to the plate and give of yourself to be beneficial to not just the house, your friends, the neighborhood, and the larger part of society. So I think it all fits in. And I think we have a lot to discuss, because I don't know about you, Susie, but I feel like this book is not a parenting book, it's a parenting curriculum. It is not something that I would advise parents to read from cover to cover. Simply because the very thing that it doesn't want you to do, I think you will eventually do. And that is to try to be perfect and, come in and do it all the right way. And there are many suggestions in this book that I completely agree with. But I think you can also go from one extreme to the other in an effort not to be so hands-on. And then you take you step back and you allow your child to step up. But then the flip side is you could really push people away in your group, of parenting group, because you made such a drastic change. And then you probably will be judgmental about their parenting, right? And so I just want to throw that out there, that it's a great book. And I would just say to parents, please pick it up and just chew on it month by month, not even week by week.
So I listened to this book, and I intend to actually buy the book as a copy so that I dog ear. I'm sorry, I know that it's really not what people who love books like to hear, but I dog ear and I write in the columns, and I take notes. And I think that this is the sort of book, as you said, like it's something that you should think about and come back to, because there are things in here that if you read as your children are young, and you're dealing with them, interacting with them in a different way, and then as they're growing and they hit middle school or high school, it's a very different sort of relationship that you have with your kids, starting and basing on the love and the respect and the interactions that you have with one another as they're young, right? So it all starts, and I'm sorry, I'm not articulating this extremely well, but I do feel like this is the sort of thing that you would come back to and then continue to check in with again. And I remember reading that, and then rereading a chapter. And I think that the reminders that none of this is like stuff you've never heard before. None of it is groundbreaking. It is all things that you actually inherently know, but when you get like whirled up in the busyness of the day, and oh my gosh, my neighbor did this for her kid, and that kid got into this university, and my neighbor did this for their kid, and that kid got into that university. And it's not all about university, but it's hard not to equate success in life with the school that be going to. And then you realize that that actually doesn't define success, right? It just defines maybe a job, which isn't the same thing as being successful. So our good friends have kids, have a son the same age as our eldest, and they recently paid for their son to go through like college counseling, and so in order to apply for college. And so this woman is coaching him on test taking and courses to take and summer sessions to take and extracurricular things to put on there and practicing essays and practicing the SAT. And then, I mean, and it just felt like when I'm hearing about this, I thought, crap, I'm not doing any of that. Like, what am I doing wrong? And again, this book isn't just about university, but it was really useful for me to read this and realize that what I'm doing for my kids is, you know, we have regular dinners together. At least 6 times a week, we all eat dinner together and talk about what's going on, talk about their day, talk about our day. As hard as it is, I keep my hands up if they're struggling with something, because they need to be able to figure out those challenges for themselves. And sometimes they need to fall on their face and they need to figure out, okay, I messed up and that didn't work. If I go in and fix that for them, then they're not learning a lesson. All they learned was it didn't work. They don't learn that they can pick themselves up and try, oh, well, maybe if I try this, it might work. Or maybe if I change this, it doesn't teach them that that tenacity that they need in order to succeed in life. But the other thing that I think that I'm teaching them is that it's so important to contribute to the betterment of the whole, the betterment of humanity, that commonality that we have with other people. Doesn't matter what color your skin is, doesn't matter where you're from. If you can somehow improve the situation of someone else, you should do that. You should contribute to that. I think that's, maybe it's not the same thing as paying for practice essay writing lessons, but I feel like they're going to be quality human beings from that.
You know, I want to back up for a second, but I'll put a pin there real quick about it's in the day-to-day. Sometimes we think it's just like, okay, pounce down, let's apply to colleges and do all of these things. But Susie, what you're saying is it's in the day-to-day, trying to help your kid recognize that they have the capacity to solve problems. And so when you get to the college application process, it should be a lot easier. And in fact, they should be really going like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Because by that stage, they will have that much agency, right? And so for those of you who are listening and haven't read the book and are not familiar with Julie's work, I just want to back up a minute and just say that she worked at Harvard, right, as a dean, and basically saw so many kids coming into Harvard not really prepared with life skills, really depending on their parents to come in and save them. And so she wanted to take a step back and look at this phenomenon. And we always make fun of it, called helicopter parents. But the truth of the matter is, when you read this book, you will see yourself, no matter what kind of parent you are and how good you try to be, or even if you think you're a hot mess, you will find yourself in this book, and hopefully also find encouragement in it as well. What stood out to me was her kind of diffusing all the information down into 4 things. Why are we so tempted to be helicopter parents? Why? What is driving our fear? And so I wanted to mention those 4 things. Number 1, she calls them shifts in parenting over the years. And one, she talked about child abductions in the 1980s. And this made parents just feel like the world was unsafe. So they locked the car doors, come inside at this time. Oh, you can't walk there. I'll take you there instead. And I thought, yeah, I never even thought about that, because I remember the kidnappings in Georgia and Atlanta in the 80s, right? And so, yes, if I had kids at that point, I'm sure my tendency would have been to just keep them indoors more. So I even have to think about when my kids were little, it was the DC sniper. And yes, we weren't trying to let our kids out. So that totally resonated with me. And then she also said, school, academics, we just have this fear of our kids missing out. If they don't do well on this test, if they don't get into this school, their whole life is doomed. And I could totally relate to that too. And then another one she talked about is the self-esteem movement, where we just build up the kids, and then they just are afraid to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one she spoke about was this scheduling of play.